So let's welcome to the stage Dan Pantano, who's President and CEO of Alpha Broder, CJ Schmidt, President and CEO of Hit Promotional Products, Sai Kapika, President and CEO of DiscountMugs.com, and Brenda Angelini, Owner, President of Sales at Proforma Angelini Martin and Associates. We don't have much time, so I want to jump right in pretty quickly. I will say that our topic is our industry in 2022 predictions from industry leaders. So I want to thank you all for being here. And while other speakers have said that they do not have crystal balls and they're not in the prediction business, each of our speakers for this session were selected for this panel because they in fact have a crystal ball and they can see the future. So I want to thank each of you for sharing your view of the future with us today. But before we go to the future, I want to level set a moment. I think our industry has succeeded a lot in the past because we deliver highly effective products that are useful and relevant to end users and help connect company brands to their prospects, clients, and employees. We've done this by, as an industry, being incredibly cost-effective and available when needed for the buyers. And during this Power Summit, we've had a lot of discussion about supply chain problems and inventory issues. And I think in many ways, our industry is at the center of the perfect storm of challenges. A lack of inventory, unpredictable shipping and delivery, rising costs for materials, factory floor labor shortages, production delays, and a whole bunch more. And all of this, I think, is coming at a time when it's especially difficult because we've seen over the last couple of years, one of the most important business skills we all need to have is agility and responsiveness and be able to react to things even more quickly than ever. So as the overall economy is growing and events are coming back, buyers need our industry to be faster and more flexible. And yet right now, I think we're slower and less responsive for what the buyers need. So I worry, frankly, that if we don't as an industry figure out how to fix this problem, buyers are going to make the simple choice we all would make, which is they're going to go on to other areas and they'll invest where they can have more responsive solutions to their needs. So my question is, what is your current reality? What are you dealing with on your production side or on your client-facing side? What's the reality of your business? And not too long on that part, because then it's more about what are you doing to best position your company to be the best possible partner for your clients in the near term and for the future. So I'm going to start with Dan on this one. Dan, go first. What are you facing right now? And more importantly, what are you doing to position yourself to be more agile in the future?
Yeah, well, obviously, Matthew, I think you laid it out really well. I mean, this is the number one priority for our company, and everyone in our company is focused on doing everything we can to kind of mitigate the supply chain challenges as best we can. Obviously, we can only control so much. We don't control manufacturing, but we've done a number of things working directly with our supplier partners, our manufacturing partners who are manufacturing product all over the world. And when you look at the issues are different. Whether you're sourcing product from Asia, South and Central America, and the impact of that, in the different challenges each one of those manufacturers have are different, and the lead time impact is been also different depending on who the manufacturer is. But we've done things around forecasting, providing orders well in advance. I mean, our orders now are out through at least the first half of 2022 to try and give line of sight. From a production capacity planning perspective to our manufacturing partners. We're doing everything in our DCs to receive more product. We've actually increased our receiving capacity by 20% across our distribution center network. So we're trying to get more product in. We're doing a lot of creative things around transportation, taking shipments direct from factories versus having them go through the DC networks that our manufacturers have. So just about everything you can imagine to shorten the lead time and to get more inventory into our facility. But we're also thinking about 2022. I mean, this issue isn't going to go away at the end of 2021. It's going to be well into 2022. And I think giving that line of sight and visibility to our manufacturing partners of what to expect next year. So as they're ramping up production capacity, they're able to support the business, for more of the long term as we think about next year.
And so, Dan, I'll come. By the way, CJ, you're going to be next. But Dan, one of the issues I've been reading about in Council and other places is the particular cost of cotton soaring. Mm-hmm. What's your future look for the cost of your raw materials, and how's that going to impact the goods that you're selling?
Yeah, so I think on Friday, I think the cost of cotton was $1.15 or $1.16 a pound, which is the highest it's been since 2011. I think everyone that was it was before my time, but I think folks that have been in the industry a long time remember the amount of price increases that went through during that period. I think things are a little different now in that a lot of the manufacturers are hedged. They have contracts, they have pricing in place. So we will feel the impact of that. I just think it's going to be more delayed than it was historically, but that's going to have an impact in 2011 or in 2022 for sure, as that kind of works its way through the supply chain.
And so, what do you think a year and a half or 2 years from now? What will the pricing be that people will see? How will it impact the price of a typical T-shirt?
I'm sorry, I don't have a crystal ball, as you said
Yeah,
earlier.
but you do. No, I said you did have a crystal ball.
Prices, whether it's the cost of raw materials, whether it's the cost of labor in facilities, whether it's the cost of freight, we are in an inflationary environment. That's not going to go away in 2022. I think we're going to feel the effects of that well through 2022. At some point, when things get imbalanced between supply and demand, I think you'll see a stabilization in pricing and costing. And I think that's going to be a while before we get there. And it's probably not till the end of 2022, at least in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. So, CJ, how about you? Going back to my original question, what's the reality of your production issues today, and what are you doing to position yourself to be much more agile in the future? Or is everything being shipped next day and it's all easy for you?
Now we're in a position where labor's okay in Florida. Actually, for 14 months we were in a really bad spot obtaining labor, and I firmly believe it was because we were handing funny money out, and unemployment was at an all-time high, et cetera. And now we're getting the labor back, and we're having a hard time getting the goods. And up until about 2 weeks ago, we were able to ship the product from China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, et cetera. And then the power shortage issues have started occurring, and that impacts our supply chain and how we purchase and whatnot. It's really become a container issue at this point. And we've all seen all the updates that ASI has done a really nice job putting out there, so we can educate our distributors and eventually end users on really what's going on. I think I saw 87 vessels out on the coast of the Los Angeles or Long Beach port, which is it's a really high number. So that's our general impact now. We can produce the goods, given the fact that we had a heck of a time getting labor last year. What do we have to do? Automate equipment accordingly. So we're in the best position we've ever been in is from a production standpoint and capacity, but we literally just need to get the goods in order to support that.
And so I think earlier this year you had announced some delays in your production. Are you now back to normal production time? And if yes, what does that mean? What's the typical product? Because it used to be that you were able to do lots of delivery within a couple of days. But what's your reality today?
Yeah, that's correct. And we carry such a breadth of product that it's kind of by category at this point. So typically embroidery is really a increasing category at this point. So that has extended lead times. And outside of that, we're at our 5 to 7 days, where we were at 3 to 4 weeks up until 2 months ago, realistically.
Okay,
and
great.
It boils down to just having the labor to support that.
And right now you're saying you're not having any challenges getting labor to your factory floor?
We are not.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's good news. Okay, so Brenda, we'll go to you. Give us the distributor perspective. What are your challenges, the biggest ones you're facing, and then what are you doing to position your own company to be agile for your clients in the future?
Well, of course, it's inventory and production time. And we've just really educated our clients. We've been really proactive of letting them know what's going on with the supply chain and getting them to plan ahead. We probably have most of our holiday orders booked. We started, pushing that in July. And so just having a good relationship with our clients, explaining to them what's going on, and then having great supplier partners that we formed good relationships with, that we can call on them and say, okay, what should I be suggesting? What do you have deep inventory? just keeping all of that up to date and letting all of our salespeople know where we should go to look, that we'll be able to find inventory, and just planning ahead. That's the only thing we can do is plan ahead, stay positive.
So Brenda, I promised I'd keep everyone on the panel on the hot seat. So I'm gonna call you on your answer to my question, because really my question was not what are you doing today to get your clients to be more patient, but in fact the opposite, which is okay, what are you doing differently, if anything, in your business to say that you can that change your practices so you can be more responsive to clients? Are you changing the way that you're approaching your clients with projects? Are you changing the way that you're sourcing things? Are you doing things anything differently to be more responsive and more flexible? But believe me, I hear the fact that we need to be telling our clients, hey, plan better, et cetera, et cetera. Although my personal belief is at the end of the day, most clients are not going to be able to do that or not willing to do that if they have other alternatives for ways to invest their dollars to accomplish similar things. You know, it was interesting yesterday on this discussion. In fact, someone was talking about giving people a $5 Starbucks gift card. Well, of course, that's not great for our industry if everyone goes to that rather than some other branded promotional item. So Brenda, are the things you're doing differently or looking at differently that you can help to be more responsive to your clients?
Well, it really is that partnership with our suppliers, and maybe, finding suppliers that we wouldn't normally go to, that we always, okay, we're always going to go to Alpha Broda, we're always going to go to San Juan. Well, now we've made relationships with smaller suppliers that may be producing here in the US, and just finding that where that deep inventory is. And I think that our clients do understand and that there is this supply chain, there is this shortage of materials. So I don't think that there is anything that we could do differently than what we are doing, which is, our sourcing differently, and just preparing them. And we can't change what the situation is. I'm not going to give somebody a Starbucks card, that's for sure. I'm going to find something that we can sell them, and educate them along the way so that they still are buying from us.
So reaching out to new vendors, reaching out to diversify your supply chain to keep your options open. I think someone was talking yesterday about having a plan A and a B and a C for products is something that sounds like
Yes.
you're doing as well.
Right. So when we're doing a presentation, yes, we're going to say, we're going to look at the stock before we send a presentation, and we're going to send things that are in stock, but then we're going to say exactly like you said, choose an A, a B, and a C. Get all three of these approved so that if we have to go to B, we can go to B. Instead of, saying, okay, I'm going to pick A, and then come back and say, oh, okay, well, can you do B? Can you do C? No, get it all okayed at the beginning, and then we'll be able to move forward quicker.
Great. Well, thank you. And before we go to Cy next, I want to remind everybody in the audience, we are taking questions in the chat, so post your questions. I hope you know I love tough questions. So the tougher the question, the more likely it is I'm going to ask it. So please think of the hottest, most difficult questions you have for each of these panelists and put them in the chat, and I will figure out the ones that make them squirm the most, and we'll ask those. So, Cy, back to our original question. Tell us about what your state of reality is for your business, and most importantly, what are you doing to position yourself to be even more agile for your clients in the future?
Yeah, so as you guys know, we're an e-commerce distributor, right? And we're also vertically integrated for most of our business. So we kind of control our own destiny end to end. So far, what we've done is we've matched our marketing spend and demand to capacity, right? So if we can't have labor or we don't have supply, we'll just match our marketing dollars effectively so that we don't set the wrong expectations for clients. We don't want to take orders that we can't fulfill in a timely manner, right? And we also have a website with real-time inventory. So if an item's out of stock, it just falls off. So client can't buy it. And they can also see real-time lead times, right? So this order is going to take 15 days and this order is going to take 3 days, right? So it's very clear for the client what they're getting into. What we've done to mitigate some of the labor and supply chain issues, as CJ said, we're also in Florida. Our labor situation's gotten significantly better. So we're spending more marketing dollars and demand's getting better, right? Now, supply chain is the next thing to fix. We feel good about our current supply chain situation. The Chinese New Year buy is probably going to be the more complicated one. We don't have clear visibility into it yet. But what I would say is, like, going back to your earlier comment, our industry is actually well set up to handle these constraints. We did have a unique situation last year where we're all trying to do our best to get PPE product here in a timely manner, right? So we flexed that agility and nimbleness that we probably would not have had if we didn't have the PPE situation we had last year. So I feel very good about our supply chain team being creative and sourcing products, whether domestically or other areas, or unique ways of getting product here through different ports. So we have a phenomenal supply chain team, and I feel optimistic that it can be a difference maker. Everybody's still going to have the challenges, but having a good team is probably going to make a big difference going into Q4 and 2022.
So what do you think the single or a couple biggest things you're doing right now that will help you be more responsive in the next 12 months to your clients?
Yeah, so like we have what's called an S&OP process. So we have demand forecasting, and we take it down to supply level and say for each category, for each SKU, how much we want. And everybody's working from the same page and the same data. Before, I would say, like, when things weren't as chaotic, everybody used to work from different playbooks, but every team talking and communicating every week on what we think the forecast is going to be and how that's changing and what we need to source gives us visibility up to 12 months down the line, and we can prepare in advance, right? If a certain category is affected because of China, I would say energy shortages, we can try and switch earlier to other countries, source domestically, et cetera. So like, I'd say like what we're doing differently now versus before COVID crisis is we're all working from the same set of numbers and same playbook. And if the supply chain team says this category is going to be a problem, we would match marketing dollars effectively to ensure we cut demand to what we can actually produce. So I would say that's probably been a key differentiator this year.
And then one of the questions in the chat side that just came in is someone saying, Sai, as a distributor, you stock product, and that person's not familiar with your business model. So without making a sales pitch or anything else, can you give us a sort of 2-sentence summary of how you do your business?
Yeah, so Discount Mugs is is a vertically integrated distributor. So we stock products, right? We decorate products ourselves and we ship it to that client in most categories. There are categories we don't carry that we rely on for suppliers, but majority of our business, we source in-house, stock in-house. So if you see our site, what we offer is a lot of it is what we produce in-house. So we can clearly articulate what our lead times are, what our real-time inventory levels are. So we have a unique model in the marketplace. So we own the customer relationship end to end, all the way from getting the customer online to fulfilling the product to them for majority of our orders. For minority of our orders where we send to drop shippers, we kind of control our own destiny. So it's a little bit easier for us to operate and match some of this stuff and keep clients happier because we're not relying on third parties for a lot of our business.
And so what % of your orders do you produce yourself versus do you have suppliers produce for you?
Almost 85% is in-house.
Okay. And then, I'm looking at the questions here. They're coming in pretty fast and furious. So let's switch to a supplier-focused question about adding USA manufacturing. There's been a question about sort of what are you doing to change your own supply chain to make more domestic manufacturing so you eliminate the variability of the importing process, importing duties, all the other craziness going on. So we'll go to CJ first on that one, and then anybody else who wants to add in on what they're doing to shift supply chain manufacturing on the actual factory side.
So I see Blake ask that question and adds pipe dream. It is a pipe dream. It sounds great on paper. We've tried to do as much as we possibly can. Mexico is actually a better option at this point. Their infrastructure is not what China's set up as, and it takes a lot longer to produce the goods, but obviously the transit time is shortened. It's a little bit more expensive. A lot of the raw materials still have to come from Asia to support that. They're not making their own raw materials. But the USA manufacturing side of things just isn't a reality. There's a handful of categories that works for: drinkware, small plastic product, etc. But there's just not. It's just not reality, unfortunately. We'd all like that to be a scenario we could take advantage of.
So I had that question. I was actually with dinner with a manufacturer last night outside of our industry, but they have historically done a lot of manufacturing in China, and they've now in the last few years actually diversified to Indonesia and Vietnam and Cambodia. So I'll ask you and everybody else in this panel, are you doing anything to diversify your supply chain beyond where it started in terms of whatever country you're focused on?
I
No,
think
the
that
pedal's very different of us. But go ahead.
yeah, I think that all happened when the additional tariffs came into play in China, and a lot of us were doing that anyway, just because of pricing was actually better in some other countries to begin with, a la Vietnam, India, Bangladesh, in cotton and nonwoven materials. So that was happening prior to COVID and prior to some issues going on in China, but at the time with tariffs. But unfortunately, we all go back to China. Vietnam has had some major COVID issues over the past 3 months, which forces us to buy some product at higher duty rates in other locations. India, Bangladesh, same scenario. There was major shutdowns accordingly. So I would love to say that we wouldn't have to be so reliant on Asia and China specifically, but I believe that we all very much are.
Yeah, from an apparel perspective, Matthew, I mean, that transition has been going on for years, frankly, of moving out of China to other parts of Asia. And so I think it's much more diversified today away from China on the apparel side than it was, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I would say the same thing for all our categories. But tariffs, we started diversifying from China to Southeast Asia. I think now we're looking more into Latin America and South America. Again, every country outside of China has its own infrastructure and reliability issues, right? So it's going to take several years to move, but I think everybody's seeing the writing on the wall from a China perspective. So everybody's trying to diversify the best they can.
Great, thank you. So it's interesting. I want to come back to questions from the audience in a moment, so please keep those questions coming. But a number of you talked about the way you are trying to assess demand and the metrics you may use to forecast, whatever the demands that you're going to see from your clients. So I'd love if each of you could talk about, when you look week to week in your business, or when you wake up every morning, are there 3 or 4 things you look at metrics wise that tell you sort of how you're doing, and more importantly, sort of what you can see in the future? And so I don't know. Let's see who will go first. We haven't started with. Sai, I don't think we started with you yet, so I'll start with you. And you talk about this a tiny bit. Like, what are the metrics you can use to forecast demand in your business, and how do you look at those, and how often do you look at them?
Yeah, so I'll talk about demand forecasting differently than what we look at on a daily basis, right? For demand forecasting, we have a phenomenal CMO who's a data scientist, right? So he builds this complex forecasting model, which takes into account a ton of variables. A variable that we look at is Apple Mobility Index. As that changes and more people are getting out there, we expect demand to get better, right? So we have something like 30 variables that go into our complicated forecasting model, which we have a lot of data, right? On the e-commerce side, we have Google data, we have Facebook data, et cetera. So it goes into our complicated forecasting model, and we update it every month to take into account the latest changes, right? So we have pretty good forecasting, I would say. That's different than how we manage the business day to day, right? When I wake up, I look at site metrics, right? Upper funnel, impressions, traffic, the conversion to AOV, et cetera. So that's what we look to manage on a daily basis. So forecasting is different from day-to-day management. And that's how we manage the business from an e-commerce perspective.
Well, and then also I'll add to my question, are there things you're doing on the outside of your own data? Meaning, do you use the stock market stock price? Do you use consumer price index? Are there any external data sources you use to give you an indication of what the future demand is going to be like?
We do. Google publishes some data, Facebook publishes some data. So in terms of how much demand is it in certain categories, in terms of searches, et cetera, we use that to input. We also use some third-party studies, right? We've engaged some third parties like McKinsey, et cetera, to give us a view, and they have better data. So we use a few different sources that are more real-time, but also we do some studies and we also do some surveys to try and forecast into 2022, 2023 for a longer term view.
And so so I'm going to put you on the spot again. I love this. What's your 2022, 2023 view for industry demand as a whole? What do you see happening?
We expect demand to get significantly better, right? I think Delta's waning. We expect demand to get significantly better. It is going to be constrained by inflation, right? And supply and labor issues, probably more supply issues than labor issues. So we expect it to be tamped down. So we have a few different models that predict demand, one that's a pessimistic model, one that's an optimistic model. I think we're going to end up somewhere in between. A modest growth over 2019 is probably what we expect in 2022.
And so for 2023, where will we be compared to 2019
I
as an
think
industry? Yeah, I know you got a crystal ball. I want to take advantage of it.
we're going to be at least double digits over 2019 in 2023. I think the supply issues are going to get better, labor issues are going to get better. I think things will start stabilizing second half of next year. So 2023 should be significantly better than 2019. I think 2022 will be better than 2019 already, but it's be not as high as growth as we would expect because of these issues.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll come back to my original question about metrics. What do you use inside your business and outside your business to help you get a sense of demand? So we'll go to Brenda next, and then CJ, and then Dan. So Brenda, any thoughts on this?
Well, for us, we measure everything by forecasting our pipeline and our sales. And luckily, our business management system has all of that data that I look at daily on where we are, and then just working with our sales reps and seeing what we have in the pipeline, forecasting that way. Also looking for how we're going to increase our business by mergers and acquisitions and hiring salespeople. So I wouldn't say that there are specific ways. I think our model is a lot different than what the suppliers are and what they use for forecasting. And we've had significant growth over the last 3 years. We've grown. So I think we're doing a good job at the way that we're using our numbers to forecast where we're going for the future. I think, looking ahead to 2022, we expect growth. We expect challenges. This growth that we've experienced has not been easy. We're working 3 times harder, to get that same sale because of the supply issues and inventory issues, but we're still doing it. We're working it. We just keep positive, and I guess that's really how our whole business is run, is just we're all going to work to make it work. We're going to give our clients the best service that we can. We're going to give our employees the best that we can give them. And I think the future is bright, but with a lot of challenges, but we'll overcome them.
And so tell me about, on the distributor side, what do you expect your sales team to do to give you visibility for the future? Do they enter, specifics about prospects, meaning they expect to get an order on this date and what % chance they have? Or how do you get any sense for your sales team what their future looks like, A, and B, how do you manage your team differently today than you did before?
Well, we have a new module that's called an opportunity module, and that we put in like a prospect or a client. Say, okay, I'm going to prospect this, call them a whale, and then we're going to do our research on them, and then we're going to plan how we're going to prospect to them and how we're going to get them on board, and we're going to project, this is how much I expect to get from that prospect. And then we're going to look at our client, and we're going to say, okay, here's this opportunity, put it in the pipeline that this huge event is coming up, and we know that we're planning on, this amount of money for that event. And then we can follow through and see, how the results came through our business management system. So I would say, we're asking our reps to put at least one opportunity of a whale into the pipeline every week. We use the 12-week year is something that we use in our planning, and so we have certain tactics that we measure every week that we need to do that should result in increasing sales. And so far, we've been very successful, but of course, we have a great team. So
well, the team is good. We'll come back to the team question in a moment. But okay, CJ, I think I said you were going to be next. What metrics do you think are most important for your business, and what do you look at on a week-to-week or day-to-day basis?
Sure. Sai pointed out the Google Analytics deal. That's even important to a traditional supplier. We get some data from our website and searches accordingly. One thing that's really important right now, especially going into holiday season, we're looking at metrics with our shipping and what our allotment is with UPS, FedEx, U.S. Postal Service, DHL, any option, a pony. at this point, and anything we can use. That's crucial coming up now, given the fact that we're shipping a lot of the goods to individual drop ship residential locations. That is a key metric that very, very important, and due to the fact that there's so many more packages moving through the the shipping network, we have limitations accordingly. As far as our supply, we've basically doubled our supply time. So what does that mean? We have to buy more inventory accordingly, and they're just larger buys and speculated more out further than we had in the past.
So what's that mean when you buy 412,000 blue mugs and they don't sell very well? What do you do then?
There's no expiration date on mugs, so we normally keep them for a while. No, we have a whole system in place for closeouts and write-offs and things of that nature. We all are sitting on a lot of hand sanitizers at this point right now, I think. So hopefully those move during holiday season. But I think all of us have sophisticated systems in place to help move slow-moving products and mitigate your risk as much as possible.
Yeah, because as an outsider from your perspective, from your business, the challenge I see the industry facing is, as the need to be faster and more agile is growing, we are doing things like you just said. You're doubling your supply time that you order, so you're ordering more. So you're increasing your inventory, which increases your risk and exposure to commitments at a time when we need to all be more agile. So it's a very difficult situation. So what's your prediction for 2023? Where are we going to be as an industry compared to 2019?
As an industry, I think we're flat compared to 2019.
In 2023, I think we'll be flat.
2023, correct.
Okay, so not as optimistic as Cy.
Very optimistic about it, our business overall, but I think as an industry overall, we're not. I don't think that number is going to be so high.
Oh, so tell me why. Give me 2 sentences. Why do you think that's the case?
A lot of consolidation is going to happen over the next 2 years.
But does that mean sales won't grow as an industry?
Yeah, I don't think it's as an industry overall. I think there's going to be, again, some consolidation and some larger companies will potentially grow a little bit more, and some of the smaller ones unfortunately can't sustain what's going on right now.
But overall, you think industry sales will be flat?
I do.
Interesting. So I'll offline, I'll give you my criticism of that, but I won't do that now. Okay. Right. So Dan, tell me your view, metrics. What metrics do you follow both inside your business, outside your business, to try to get some handle on what the future looks like?
Yeah, well, I think there's two pieces to that question. One is just what do we do day in, day out to forecast our business really around the supply chain and managing inventory. And we have a very sophisticated system that looks at our portfolio of products by category, because I think as CJ just talked about, the lead times are very different. And so we've adjusted our lead times and our systems based on what we're actually seeing happen. But we look at historical data, and the more current that you get when you look back at the historical data, the more relevant it becomes into how we forecast. And then we manipulate it where we've seen spikes in demand. Retail brands is a great example. Who would have predicted a year ago that retail brands would be growing at the rate they're growing? We didn't predict that. So we've had to adjust our forecast accordingly. And obviously our lead times, given some of the supply chain challenges, have to be extended. So you're ordering more inventory, you're carrying a higher safety stock across your product categories when you've got a supply chain that's impacted the way that it has been over the last several months. And then the other part of it is just planning, as we're right in the process now, beginning our planning for 2022. And you do look at general health of the economy. I think you look at the macro issues that are going on, whether that's inflation, I think some of these supply chain constraints. And as we're starting to think about, the 2022 plan, that's when I think you look at more of the macro activity of what's happening, and that will have a big impact on what we plan for next year. But maybe to circumvent your next question, I think next year is going to be a really, really healthy year. I mean, we've got a lot of momentum, I think, as everyone has shared, especially that momentum has really picked up as 2021 has gone on, and third quarter was big for everybody. So I think the industry is at 2019 levels or higher right now in many cases. So I think next year is going to be a really strong year. I think, what we don't have a crystal ball on is how does inflation start to impact demand Does the supply chain not get under control? I do think at some point in the back half of 22, the supply chain gets under control. But those could both be limiters to the growth in the industry for next year. But I just think the overall demand right now for promotional products is incredibly strong, and I think that's going to continue well into 2022.
And what about 2023? Where are we going to be? Is CJ right with his pessimistic doom and gloom view?
No, I'm probably
or
a little
is
more.
Cy right? Hey, yeah, CJ, I'm summarizing your view. I know, I got it.
No, I'm
2019 was
probably
a
more
great year.
optimistic than CJ, but I mean, there's some big unknowns, right? And the unknowns are around supply chain and inflation. And does that put a damper on the growth in this industry? And I think that'll play itself out probably in 2022. But I just think that the demand right now for promotional products is really, really strong. So I don't see it getting back to where we'd be flat to 2019 and 23. I think we're going to grow versus 2019 and 22, and probably continue that momentum. Maybe it'll slow a bit in 23, but it'll still continue to be healthy, I think.
So
I have
Dan,
something additional to add to that, if that's
Please.
okay. I think if you see like digital marketing, right, it's getting very expensive as e-commerce is growing fast. Facebook cost per click, I think, has gone up 50% since January. So just as a marketing vehicle, I think promotional products will be more attractive as a result of some of these additional headwinds that the marketing industry itself is facing.
That's a great point, Cy. In fact, I was on a webinar for Outside the Industry a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about digital marketing, and that was the reality they were all dealing with, is that the price increases for digital marketing people have been doing have been unbelievably dramatic. And so I do think from a cost value perspective, our industry has an opportunity to be an even more favorable comparison as long as we keep focusing on fast delivery times, quality products, and that we prove our value. I think one of the challenges we have as an industry is how to remind people about the actual value we give, how many, what's the effective cost per impression, et cetera. And by the way, if you don't have all the data, not the panelists necessarily, but everybody, Counselor Magazine does an annual impression study for the industry where we look at the impression that the products in the industry make, and we give a number of slides and data that you can use with your clients on proving the value of the industry. I encourage you to look that up on our website. If you haven't already, it's a free resource available to you. And I think it's very valuable. People use it to help remind their buyers how effective our products in the industry are. So Dan, I had a question for you because you're in the, certainly in the wearable space in addition to hard goods, but very focused on wearables. Tell me, there's been discussion about during COVID, people have gained weight and the average size of the order, not physical, not how many units, but in fact their shirt sizes have increased. What are you doing for 2022 in order sizes? Are you ordering smaller sizes again? What are you doing? What's your crystal ball tell you about the future?
Well, I mean, we have several styles that go up to 6XL, so I'm not sure you can get much more beyond that. But yeah, the size runs, I mean, if you just look over the last several years, I mean, it's expanded. And the amount of extended sizes that we have across the number of styles that we carry is much greater now than it's ever been. And as we forecast, we do look at those trends, right? And when we order product, we have to order it not only style, color, but you have to order at the size level as well. So when we start to see trends and shifts and how that spreads across the sizing, we obviously adjust our forecast accordingly.
And so, but are you seeing a shift back to smaller sizes, or is the average physical size of items reverting back to where it was in 2019, or are we still? What are you seeing order wise?
It's actually been pretty consistent. We definitely saw an increase, kind of going into 2019 and 2020, an increase in smaller sizes, and the demand for that. But it hasn't been much of a change in that trend over the last couple of years, even through COVID. So a lot of people were on Peloton during COVID, so not everybody sat home and ate.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, in order to keep things very interesting and unpredictable for you guys, I'm going to switch the topic completely and talk about employees and employee culture. I'm curious what each of you are doing, at this time when we're in this hybrid remote work world for your office workers, or you're not in a remote work world, if you're in a physical office, generally where you are with that, but more importantly, what are you doing to connect with your employees? What are you doing to have real feeling of a belonging by your employees? They're part of something if they're not working in the office. So let's see. We haven't started with Brenda first before. So Brenda, we're going to start with you first, and then we'll go Dan, then CJ, then Cy.
So we're very focused on having our employees engaged. So we have On Mondays, we have Zoom calls with all the salespeople. On Wednesdays, we have Zoom calls with all the CSRs. Then monthly, we have a Zoom activity. This month, we're having a pumpkin carving contest via Zoom. We also, as I said, operate on the 12-week year, and so we'll be doing a celebration at the end of that. We're going on a pontoon boat out on Lake Conroe. We're always thinking of ways to uplift all of our employees, and we are very particular about bringing on new people that they fit with our culture. We have a very defined culture, and it works really well for all of us. And I think that's how we attract more people to come on board with us, because of our culture. We always are appreciating our employees and our suppliers too. Very much, that's part of our culture too, is to appreciate our suppliers and engage them with some of the things that we do with our employees.
So thank you. I just got my 2-minute warning, and I have 25 more questions to go. So I'm going to ask each of you to go real fast with this answer, and then I'll go to my wrap-up question. But I'm doing a horrible job managing time today. So I think I said Sai's next, but if I didn't say that, Sai, you're next.
All right. I thought you said I was last, but I'll go. We're focused on the soft stuff, right, that Brenda was talking about. But I think more importantly, if you see there's a great resignation coming, right? Like everybody's leaving, whether they have jobs or not. What we're trying to take away from that is, like, we want to give people very clear reviews, right, on how they stand, what their career path looks like, what the future in their organization looks like, which seems to be the gap, rather than money that's letting people, especially the salaried workforce, leave. So we're trying to do a lot more of that in Q4 and like have a performance review process, things that really fell off during COVID last year. We're trying to re-engage and do more of that stuff in Q4 this year.
Great, thank you. Sorry if I put you out of order there. CJ, you're next. And then Dan, of course.
More of our office staff is working from home now, so we're trying to put together events monthly that get them back together, or happy hours of some sort, or bowling, or axe throwing, or whatever it may be, right? We're kind of relying on our customer service team to come up with ideas for that. So that's been a huge challenge. As Sai said when we were on our little deal before, there's not, like, it's myself and a handful of others that are in the office right now. We used to have 350 bodies here. So a bit different with that, and I don't see it coming back full to the office anytime soon. So you have to figure out unique ways to keep your employees engaged and part of your culture.
And Dan, how about you?
Yeah, so we have a set of core values, which really serves as our foundation and really defines our culture. And so we call it iCare. It's integrity, customer focused, accountability, respect, and excellence. And I think in this environment, we've obviously had to do a lot more virtually with our organization, just like CJ said. And we've got, a lot of our office folks are working from home, at least in a hybrid model. So we just don't get everyone together in the frequency that we used to across our facilities. But I would say COVID actually helped us become better at communicating. We were somewhat in crisis mode. You go back to March of 2020. And so we've kind of, kept with a consistent cadence of having, all hands calls. And then obviously we do a lot of things at the department level to drive a consistent message across the organization. But, we're doing a lot around, to Sai's point, around employee development and engagement. Because people are leaving. It's not about money. It's about career. It's about opportunity. It's about growing. It's about being challenged. It's about being recognized for what they're doing. So we're spending a lot of time on that side of the business, because in this environment, losing good people is really, really painful. So we want to make sure that we're retaining our talent.
So on that note, I want to switch to my last question, which is really, this Power Summit has had a whole bunch of themes, including employee issues, supply chain issues, environmental, social issues, the ESG, trend that's going on in America, and diversity and inclusion issues. So as you think about the 2022 Power Summit, so a year from today, what are the biggest issues the industry is going to face? So, I'm putting on the spot. What are the top 2 or 3 things of the issues next year? They could be the same or different, but what are the top 2 or 3 things next year we'll be facing as an industry at this time, so in the end of next year? And what are your 3 tips for everybody listening for what they should be doing in their business today to position themselves for success in the next 12 months? So let's see. I haven't started. Well, I guess start with everybody, but I'm going to put Dan on the spot first. So Dan, what's the next year's topics of Power Summit, and what's the 3 things everyone should be doing to make their business better?
Well, I think if to make it brief, I do think we're going to be talking about supply chain. Even at this point next year, I don't think it's not going to be where it was in 2019 or from a stability and predictability perspective. So I do think it's going to persist. I do think that's going to be a topic. I think making sure that we're driving value for the end user. So as a supplier, we're helping our customers do that, and our distributors are doing that for the end user, because I think inflation is going to be a real issue. So you're going to have to demonstrate the value of what we're delivering to our customers. And I think the third, technology, right? Digital technology continues to move at a rapid pace, especially in this industry. And my advice, to folks is you have to be looking at what you're doing from a technology perspective to keep up with the market, to keep up with the demands ultimately of what the end user wants and how they want to consume and interact with your company. So that's what I think we'll be talking about next year. And I think that's what, as a company, we're focused on, is investments in technology.
So what 3 things? So technology is one that people should focus on. What's 2 more things people should be thinking about right now, today in their business?
I would say making sure that you are providing value for your customer, however you define how you do that, but making sure that it's not just about selling product. It has to be about solving problems and bringing solutions to your customer. And if you're just sourcing and selling product, there's lots of choices for that. You've really got to distinguish yourself by actually driving value and solving problems and helping your customers ultimately be successful.
So Dan's not very good at counting. So far, that's 2, Dan. I asked for 3. I'm a tough guy. Sorry. What's your 3rd thing?
I would make sure you plan, right? I think as we just talked about before, we're in the 2022 planning stages right now, and getting out in front of where you think the business is going to go from a forecasting perspective is going to help you mitigate the supply chain challenges, in a way that hopefully will be better than what we did this year, because I don't think this year we did a great job of predicting, the demand that we saw. So getting out in front of it will help to make 2022 a more successful year on the supply chain front.
Okay, and the music is playing in my ear to get off the stage. So real quick, Cy, then Brenda, then CJ will give you the final word. Cy, 3 things for the future people should be working on, and what's the topics for next year's Power Summit?
3 things for the future people should be working on is back to basics, right? Provide a good customer experience, get orders out on time, good quality. Second is being nimble, right? And being responsive to the supply chain issues. And third is communication to the customers, right? And set good expectations. I think where we're going to be talking about next year this time is we're going to be talking about the fact that we didn't adapt to how the world has changed, right? People working from home, etc. I think we're so stuck in the day-to-day challenges that we're losing sight of where the industry is going. I think we'll be talking about investments and not having to keep up with customer changes.
All right. Well, thank you. And you're good at math. So now, CJ, up to you. No, sorry, Brenda. Brenda, I lied. Brenda, you.
Okay, 3 things. Number 1 is exceed client expectations. Number 2 is to continue to grow our supplier relationships. And number 3 would be to sustain a healthy work environment to attract more employees. And next year, I agree with Dan about supply chain. Luckily, shameless plug, Proforma has great technology, so I'm up to par with that and improving daily. And then I think inflation is definitely going to be something to talk about, how we combat or what value we add to subside that inflation.
All right, thank you. CJ, your turn.
Yeah, planning is crucial in these scenarios. Buying the inventory ahead of time from a distributor perspective, kind of taking a mitigated risk on what your programs look like and absorbing that inventory accordingly. Building a better culture within your organization to keep your employees happy while working at home. And for the suppliers, just being nimble and improving your supply chain, and again, for us, taking more risks on some inventory levels on key performers that continue to do well year after year after year. What we're going to be talking about, technology is number one, always been number one for me. And the more we all get integrated, the better we all perform together. Two would be no one mentioned print on demand and smaller runs. That's a massive new growth sector of our industry, and can be a great thing. But technology is really big behind that. And three is just the inflationary risks that are going to go on, and price increases accordingly, and plan ahead for that.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Well, we're way over time, and I apologize to the next group. On the technology issue, by the way, we had a cybersecurity panel yesterday, and that will be available on our website in the next couple of days. Those people who missed that one, it was apparently was very well received, and people found it very helpful in thinking about cybersecurity risk. That's a big risk we all face these days. Well, I want to thank our panelists. Again, we're out of time, and I'm sorry about that. I encourage all our panelists, look at the questions in the chat, because there are questions for each of you and comments about each of you in the chat. So you want to make sure you look at those and respond to them if you can, offline. But again, thank you all for being a part of this. I appreciate it very much.